Dear scholars, Namaskar. I am Anjali, your educator on STEP. I welcome you all to this class. We will begin the chapter Nationalism in India with a brief introduction through a presentation. Foremost, we will break the title of the chapter Nationalism in India. Now, why nationalism? Let us understand what this nationalism means. So, here this word nationalism. Nationalism is the feeling of belonging to one nation, to hold the identity of being a citizen, to be the part of its culture, workforce, heritage. That is nationalism. Now, why in the title we have this topic in India? India has been colonized, no, India had been colonized for many hundred years by European powers. And anti-colonial movement was very important to fight against this imperialism, or we can also say an autocratic rule. That is why we have this word in India in the title. So hence the title Nationalism in India. Let us take the byline of this chapter, which I have wrote for better explanation. Nation building amidst colonial struggle. So, what is nation building? Nation building, in terms of history, or we say in terms of this chapter, means that how the nation was built, starting from the freedom struggle, leading it up to forming the Constituent Assembly, then to gain the freedom to have the own constitution, India being the republic, and then to the coming of new age, and today we are into the age of artificial intelligence. This is known as nation building. Amidst means in between colonial struggle, the struggle that was against colonies of European nations, and how we became a nation state. Now, quickly we'll take these points. All of what I have mentioned in the presentation solely belongs to NCRT. So your context has been well taken care of here. Now we have the very first point, that is nationalism in India is equal to anti-colonial movement. The feeling of nationalism arose when that um, there was this antipathy towards the Britishers, when there were the anti feelings towards Britishers. So it was basically that two things were going in contrast. Nationalism was increasing, and the the feelings towards Britishers, the good feelings toward Britishers were being decreased. Second point we have here is colonial brutalism created a shared bond between diverse Indians, which means that the the bond between Indians, or the different communities, the different castes of India, they came closer. Why? Because they had a particular purpose, and that purpose was to they had to fight against the improper, the brutal behavior of Britishers that was done towards Indians. Now, different experiences and different nuances of freedom, which means that freedom meant different for everybody. Later in the chapter only, we'll come to know that freedom for women was about dignity, about holding their value. For them, freedom was the freedom of education, the freedom of being valued, the freedom of able to go out and participate in the national movements. Whereas the nuance of freedom for a business person was the freedom of trade, removal of any kind of barrier or any kind of tariff. So, freedom for each and every citizen of India was different. The next point we have here is Congress under Gandhiji developed national movements. Gandhiji, after returning from South Africa in 1915, when he came to India, he became the protagonist of the national movements here in India, and he was the one person who was connected most to the masses. Now, this chapter, which is Nationalism in India, is divided in three broad based national movements, which apparently it forced Britishers to leave the country, and that is how we became free from the British rule. The first landmark movement that we had was non-cooperation Khilafat movement. Now it was amalgamation of two movements coming together under one umbrella, Hindus and Muslims coming together under one umbrella and fighting non-cooperating towards Britishers. And the year in which this was done was 1920 to 1922. Next we have was civil disobedience movement, which was done in two installments. One went up to 1930 and continued till 1931. The other installment, which we will study later in this chapter, that why it took place in the two parts, we'll study later. And began it re-began in 1932 and went till 1934. And the last movement, which is Quit India movement, one of the very important movement which absolutely brought the state machinery to a stop and which asked Britishers to completely withdraw India. This was Quit India movement. So our chapter is divided into three. These are the movements. We'll come up to the next slide now. Now the headings are as going as we have in NCRT. So next up we have is the First World War, Khilafat and non-cooperation. Now we are going to study here the First World War. Now you would ask me that why, ma'am, we are studying about the three movements, suddenly we go up to First World War. What is the connection between that? Absolutely, we do have the connection with First World War and the Indian national movements. Why? Because the First World War was going between the two parties, one being Central Powers and the other being allies. Please listen to this very carefully so that you will understand the connection of First World War with the upcoming national movements. I'll repeat, the First World War was going between the two groups or the two parties. One was Central Powers and the other was Allies. Central Powers, we had Germany, second Austria Hungary, and third Turkey. These three countries were on the one side. The other part we had allies. In allies, there were France, Italy, Great Britain, Japan, Russia, and USA, which entered in 1970. So these were the two parties between whom the First World War was going on. Now, Great Britain was in the Allies, and India was the colony of Great Britain. So India had to participate to support Great Britain in World War First. World War First was also known as Great War, and it was actually the greatest war of all times in the history. So India participated on the behalf of Great Britain. How India participated? Indian soldiers went to fight in the support of Great Britain. So India basically provided the support of manpower, soldiers, and logistics. All right. Now, what was the cause of First World War? So we are going to study here that there were the overall cause that there was a fight or there was rivalry of having economic power, rivalry of being political, rivalry in terms of economics also. So this was the fight in overall terms. The immediate cause that we know about First World War, that why it happened, this was triggered when the Archduke, or in simple terms, we can say the monarch of Austria Hungary got assassinated, whose name was Archduke Franz Ferdinand. He got assassinated. That is why the World War was sparked up high, and all the countries, uh, in the terms of Central Powers and the Allies, were fighting together. Now, India was because in support of Great Britain, and uh, it the country had sent some. There were times when forced recruitments were being done. So that is how a lot of support was extended from the part of India. But when Indians thought that if we will support Britishers in the war, our freedom struggle would slow down, or our struggle would come down. We will have more of powers, we will get more of support of Britishers, but eventually this did not happen. That is why Indians were not happy with the response they got from Britishers post World War First, and here this unhappiness was one chance when Gandhiji saw that he could launch his satyagrahas. This was the role of First World War in the making of upcoming satyagrahas and the national movements. So let us look at the screen. First World War started from 1914 and went up till 1918. Now the consequences of First World War were all of these. Why all of these? Because India was fighting on in the support of Great Britain. So definitely the defense budget would have increased. Because the budget would have increased, they had to somewhere balance it. And for balancing that, the custom duties were raised, the income tax was introduced, forced recruitment was being done. The citizens were forcibly recruited in the army to support the Great Britain. Then influenza epidemic. Now epidemic as in the disease was prevalent, and this disease was influenza. So somewhere these were the consequences of the First World War. Now, as we discussed that this was one particular uh, time when Gandhiji saw that now we have to launch many satyagrahas so that the Indians can get rid of their daily life problems. Now we'll study about the satyagrahas of Mahatma Gandhi. So in 1916, one satyagraha uh, that was held. The place is Champaran in Bihar. And what was the cause? The cause was the oppressive means which was not that much in support. Indeed, it was very harsh. So harsh plantation system of indigo. That means the farmers had to plant the indigo, but they were not being paid for that. That they were not being duly paid for that. Therefore, the plantation system was very oppressive. Then next we have is 1917 in Khera, Gujarat, against the the revenue demand, which was very high, and farmers and the peasants were not able to pay that much high amount because the crop had failed. The crop had failed. The diseases were prevalent. So to to curb the demand of high revenue, this satyagraha was done in Kheda, which is one of the district in Gujarat. The next satyagraha which Gandhiji had was in 1918 in Ahmedabad, Gujarat, and this was done to have good and proper working conditions in the mills for the mill workers. So they were fighting against the harsh conditions and the payment that was denied to mill workers. Now we'll come to next slide.
Now we have the Rowlatt Act 1990. So we are going to take this topic into three sections. Number one is what, then we have is why, and then is who. So let's answer first what. That what does the Rowlatt Act 1919 means? So this act was very hurriedly passed by the Imperial Legislative Council, in which Britishers were the main decision makers. And this act mainly had two provisions. Number one provision was every kind of political activity that was going in the country should be repressed, should be stopped. The second provision of the act was that every political prisoner can be detained without any trial for 2 years. That means any political prisoner or any political person who is trying to do any kind of activity which in their eyes is is going violent, he can be or she can be taken into custody without any trial, without any giving him a chance for 2 years, which in today's world is a complete infringement of fundamental rights, because we have right to strike, we have right to movement, we have right to freedom of expression. Okay, the next question that we asked was who passed this act. So this act was framed in the committee. The head of the committee was Sir Sidney Rowlatt, and at that time in 1919 the viceroy was Lord Chelmsford. And then we have why, that why was Rowlatt Act passed this much hurriedly, which was not a purposeful act at all. So the answer of why we have here is because the national movements were at surge, because the feeling of nationalism was being encouraged in Indians. That is why they wanted to stop this kind of feeling, and they wanted to discourage these kind of movements. They wanted to somehow bring down every kind of activity that was going in the country at that time, with the point of view of achieving freedom. So now we come to this point that after witnessing this Rowlatt Act, which was very brutal in the terms of the freedom for Indians, Gandhiji launched nationwide satyagrah, that this to oppose this Rowlatt Act. So strikes were held, shops were closed down, people came on street to uh, to to strike against this Rowlatt Act. Now the response that came from the end of Britishers was that they barred Mahatma Gandhi ji to enter Delhi, and they came down heavily on roads, and they did a kind of violence towards people who were striking against the Rowlatt Act. They attacked local police, shops, banks, railway stations. Then this martial law was imposed. So we'll see that what is this martial law. So this martial law was a law when the civil administration that was in the hands of the executives running the country, this control was taken over by the military authority, which means that now the day-to-day proceedings and all the civil authority would go in the hands of military authority. So at that time, General Dyer took over the command of the British India. And then the very infamous incident Jallianwala Bagh massacre happened. And in the words of General Dyer, he declared that this Jallianwala Bagh massacre was done to create terror in the minds of Indian, which was very shameful for him to do such kind of, we can say, massacre. Uh, till date, we have the record of this massacre. Now, the all the Indians, they were very furious, they were agitated, and the violence had spread in the country. So therefore, Gandhiji had called off every satyagrah, because for him there was one goal, and that was ensuring peace and non-violence in the country. Then Gandhiji understood that to have this freedom from Britishers, a kind of national movement is required. and which will be a very broad based movement and includes both Hindus and Muslims together. So at this point of time, he thought of launching Khilafat issue along with the non-cooperation movement. Now we'll understand what is Khilafat. So, as we discussed in the previous slide, that Turkey had been defeated in World War First because it was the part of Central Powers. So, Central Powers were defeated, and hence Turkey was also defeated, and the Allies won over. So, in Turkey, the rule was the whole country was taken care or was ruled by the Ottoman Empire, and this Ottoman emperor was Khalifa, whose power had come to an end because Turkey had lost. And Muslims and Gandhiji wanted restoration of powers of Khalifa. So that is why Gandhiji very intelligently took this Khalifa issue, which is the Khilafat issue, with the non-cooperation movement so that Hindus and Muslims can come together and one very pan-India based national movement could be launched, which was non-cooperation Khilafat movement. So now we are going to study about non-cooperation Khilafat movement. So this movement began in January 1921, though with timeline we consider that this movement started from 1920 and went up to 1922. So different social groups participated in this movement with their own aspirations, with their own goals, and with their, as we discussed, with their own nuances of freedom. So the very first point we have here is how the movement in the town took place. In the specific towns, the movement was carried on by students, teachers, lawyers, and the traders, the businessmen. So students, they left their government schools and colleges so that they could show that we are no more cooperating and we do not want to educate ourselves into the schools that are run by British government. The teachers had resigned, lawyers, they gave up their legal practices because even they were unhappy that how British administration is being carried. And they all the Indians, they boycotted the foreign goods that were imported in India. Now we have rebellion in the countryside. So what was happening in the countryside? So with respect to that, agriculture agriculture was playing a major role because even the land was under the hands or under the rights of British government. So we would see two two places here, the examples of two places how rebellion was going in those two places. Number one example we have here is Awadh. Okay, Awadh. Uh, if we talk about the present day, it is in Uttar Pradesh. So the leader in Awadh for that rebellion was Baba Ramchandra. And what was the movement about? The movement was peasant movement against talukdars and landlords. Talukdars are the people who hold the land. Taluk means to hold a right of the land. Okay, so why was the movement carried on? Because talukdars and the landlords, they were demanding very high revenue, very high cesses, and also they used to do begar. Begar means the forced labor. This was the movement in Awadh. Now we come to Andhra Pradesh. In Andhra Pradesh, tribal guerrilla warfare took place under the leadership of Alluri Sitaram Raju, who was also known as the folk hero. And the movement was against the holding of land by British administration, as the peasants were no more, the tribal peasants were no more allowed to have the rights on the land, so that it was denied to them the grazing of their cattle and the collection of fuel wood and other forest produces. So that is why they also rebelled against the British administration. Now we'll read this point here. Gudem rebels carried guerrilla warfare against closure of large forest areas of the British government. In 1922, non-cooperation movement was halted because of the violence that was created in the country, and a particular incident which took place in Chauri Chaura in Gorakhpur. So what happened was that a police station was set on fire by the rebellions. So Gandhiji saw that this movement is taking a violent turn, therefore he halted the movement completely. We'll come to the next slide. Okay, so now we're starting here transition non-cooperation to civil disobedience movement. There's a difference between the two. Non-cooperation meant that Indians are not able to cooperate, but they're not breaking any law. It means that we are not able to cooperate, but in civil disobedience. Look at the root word. It is disobedience. That means the the feelings of Indians, it went into anti. It went into contrast, and now they were disobeying that whatever Britishers would say, they will not obey, they will completely disobey. So that was the difference between non-cooperation and civil disobedience. That in civil disobedience, Indians were trying to break the laws, they were trying to break the shackles that were put by British administration. Now till non-cooperation movement and forward, the liberals and the moderates and the other leaders belonging to Indian National Congress and other parties like Muslim League, etc., they were tired and exhausted of mass movements and struggles. Now they wanted to enter the system, to enter into provincial councils, and to be the part of that council, the legislature, and then question the policies that were implemented by British government. This right to Indians was given by Government of India Act 1919. Now in 1923, Chitranjan Das, Chitranjan Das and Motilal Nehru, they together formed Swaraj Party so that they could win elections of the provincial legislature and they could enter the legislature and then oppose British policies within the councils, being the part of the system. During that, the world was going through economic slowdown, and which was also known as economic depression, which equally affected all of the countries in the world. Now 1928, this year holds a significant cut to check, holds a significant importance, because in this year Simon Commission was sent to India from the British government that was sitting in London. And this commission had two roles. Number one, they had to evaluate Government of India Act 1919, and second, they had to suggest constitutional reforms that could take place in India. Now, Indians did not like this step of the British government sitting in London. They retaliated and they greeted, or we can say they ungreeted, the British Simon Commission with the slogan, "Go back, Simon." Now, the problem was that the commission did not had a single Indian member. Therefore, Congress, Muslim League, and other political parties asked Simon Commission to go back. Now, this Simon Commission again turned into a very violent episode, and lathi charge was done on rebellion Indians, and it was this moment that a very brave freedom fighter Lala Lajpat Rai passed away. To undo all these wrongdoings, in 1929, Lord Irwin announced dominion status for India, and it and he reiterated that Indians should participate in round table conference which will happen in London to discuss further reforms. Now let us understand what is this dominion status. Let's come to these pointers. Number 1, according to dominion status, Indians will always pay allegiance to the British crown or the British monarch. Leaders which will be elected in the legislatures, they have to serve to the viceroy. The unelected leaders will administer oath in the name of the British crown. Indian army will be led by Britisher field marshal. The judges will be appointed also by the British government. So by this we can understand that it was a bit tricky game, that in representation they are putting Indians forward, but actually the whole power was caught in the hands of Britishers. Therefore, in December 1929, during the Lahore Congress session, which was presided by Jawaharlal Nehru, a proposal was put forward, and it was taken by the swear that India will fight for Purna Swaraj now, which means complete independence. And on 26th January 1930, Indians celebrated their first Independence Day to make it memorable that now onwards their one goal is to achieve complete freedom. Let's come to the next slide. The Salt March and the Civil Disobedience Movement. Salt March holds a very imperative. Salt March and the Civil Disobedience Movement. Salt March holds very valuable place in history. Now, Gandhiji well understood that it was very important that a common symbol is required for protesting and for achieving freedom. Therefore, he found a very powerful symbol in salt, because it was a necessity and it was used by every household, be rich or poor. Therefore, he also knew that this salt is being manufactured solely by British government, and this is one of the arbitrary rule, because salt is a basic commodity and it cannot be taxed high, and British cannot hold monopoly while manufacturing the salt. Therefore, to rebel, to disobey against the British policy of manufacturing salt, which would ultimately lead to the freedom movement of civil disobedience movement, he sent a letter to Lord Irwin on 31st January 1930 stating his 11 demands. One of those demands was to remove the salt law, to remove the high tax, and to remove the monopoly rights over manufacturing of salt. And he had given time till 11th of March, that if Lord Irwin accepts it, it's fine, but if he does not, then he will launch the civil disobedience movement. And then he and this uh, this one of the demands and all of the demands not fulfilled. Therefore, he did a salt march from Sabarmati to the river Dandi with his 78 volunteers, and the total mile that were counted were 240 miles. So the march was done for 240 miles. And then on 6th April, they all reached Dandi, and then there at the moment they broke the salt law and they manufactured the salt. Now, civil disobedience movement, it had the following provisions. During the civil disobedience movement, all the colonial laws were broken. Whichever law was made by the colony, that means the Britishers, they were broken completely. The liquor shops were picketed, foreign goods and the other items were all boycotted. Village officials had resigned from their duty. Peasants, they refused to pay rents and the revenue. And also the villagers, they violated forest laws that were made by the now, seeing all this disturbance in the country, again a pact was done between Gandhiji and Lord Irwin, on 5th of March 1931. According to this pact, Gandhiji had to participate in the second round table conference, which will happen in London to discuss the reforms. And government had agreed to release the political prisoners who were put in the bars for the reason of civil disobedience. Therefore, in 1931, the first installment of civil disobedience movement was called off. Afterwards, Gandhiji went to London for the Round Table Conference, but the negotiations between all of them could not take place. Therefore, he had returned disappointed. Here, back in India, he realized when he reached back that Britishers have done which was not acceptable by Gandhiji, that leaders such as Jawaharlal Nehru, Abdul Ghaffar Khan, they were arrested and they were put in jail for the blame that they had violated the laws, and Indian National Congress was declared illegal. Therefore, then Gandhiji announced that from 1932 onwards, the second installment of civil disobedience movement would resume, and then it went up to 1934. Now, for different Indians, their ideals, their objectives, and their meaning of Swaraj was very different from each other with respect to the civil disobedience movement. They all had their ideals, their beliefs for the achieving of Swaraj. Now, first, we would see here the examples of Patidars of Gujarat and Jats of Uttar Pradesh. So, these were the rich landholders and the peasant community. For them, the objective of Swaraj, the objective of civil disobedience movement was that the revenue demand taken should be taken. Now, civil disobedience movement was different for every social group, for every trader, for women. Their ideals, objectives, and the meaning of Swaraj differed from each other. Let us see the example of Patidars of Gujarat and Jats of Uttar Pradesh. They were the rich landowners and the peasant community, and therefore they were hit badly by the economic slowdown that was going in the country. Therefore, the objective they held for participating in civil disobedience movement was that they demanded reduction of revenue. For them, the meaning of Swaraj was that the revenue should come down and it should be easier for them to carry on agriculture. The next group we have is peasantry. Again, this community was also hit by the trade depression, and for them, they wanted the remission of rent on the land they were cultivating. For them, the meaning of Swaraj was ease of rent so that they could carry on their agriculture well. The next social group we have here is women. Now, women participated in civil disobedience movement at a large scale. And also, this is one of the difference between non-cooperation and civil disobedience movement, that in CDM, women had shown their participation. For them, serving the nation was their sacred duty. Therefore, their objective was to highlight the role of women in the national movements of India. Next group we have is merchants and industrialists. For them, the objective of participating in CDM were two. Number one, they wanted protection against the foreign imported goods. Number second, they wanted that imports should not happen. For them, the meaning of Swaraj was that it should be very easy for them to carry out business, therefore, ease of doing business. To organize these business interests, the merchants and the industrialists of India, they had formed two groups. Number one was IICC, Indian Industrial and Commercial Congress, which was formed in 1920. The second group was FICCI, which is Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, which was formed in 1927. There were also some social groups which were not satisfied with civil disobedience movement and which did not show their participation, and such one group was Dalits, Harijan. Now, the this group of people, they started calling themselves Dalits, which means oppressed, after 1930s. According to Gandhiji, he believed that Swaraj would not come for next 100 years if untouchability was not eliminated from India. Therefore, Gandhiji started calling this group as Harijan, and he organized satyagrahs so that he he was able to empower Dalits with the entry in the temples, and they could have access to Bedingas, schools, or for railways and every facility that is provided to other Indian. The reason that they did not participated, that they felt separated, they felt alienated, and the practice of untouchability. The solution for such non-participation was political and social empowerment. Therefore, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar had organized Dalits into DCA, Depressed Classes Association, in 1930. The efforts done by Gandhiji was that he signed a Pune Pact in 1932 to empower Dalits. This pact gave rights and reservation to the Dalits in provincial and central legislative councils. The other group which was not in the coordination of civil disobedience movement was the community of Muslims. The reason they felt that, according to them, more representation was given to Hindus, and especially after non-cooperation Khilafat movement, Muslims felt alienated from Congress because they believed that Indian National Congress is growing closer to the Hindus and the Hindus organizations such as Hindu Mahasabha. Plus, the negotiations over the reservation in the Central Assembly were also not taking place. Therefore, they felt that now they have become a minority in India. Quit India movement, a truly mass movement which brought state machinery to completely collapse. And Indians wanted Britishers to completely quit India and withdraw, and they wanted to have their own government in India thereafter. Now, the meaning of the Quit India movement here is that Indians wanted complete withdrawal of British from India. They wanted that the government should run by the Indians themselves. The cause here of Quit India movement was that the Cripps mission had failed badly. This mission was sent by British government and under the supervision of Sir Stafford Cripps. According to this mission, India would have dominion status. And Gandhiji called this mission as post dated check, that no more any kind of dominant status was required. All they wanted was complete freedom from Britishers. Also, one of the cause for QIM was effects of World War II, because during this war the Britishers had prioritized war over the Indian welfare. Therefore, there was public anger, and Indians felt that they will again be used for participating in war as was done in World War First. Also, there were many economic effects of World War II. The prices had gone up, the tax was surged, and there was acute shortage of essential goods. The participants who gave their best contributions in Quit India movement were Jay Prakash Narayan, Aruna Asaf Ali, Matangini Hazra, Kanaklata Barua, Rama Devi, and many more. During this historic Quit India movement, one of the very popular and momentous speech was given by Gandhiji, which was named as Do or Die speech. According to this speech, Gandhiji, he announced that we shall either free India from the British rule or we will completely die in the attempt, but we will no more accept the perpetuation of slavery from the Britishers. The final topic of the chapter is the sense of collective belonging. That in this topic, the united struggle is highlighted by the use of history, fiction, folklore, songs, prints, and symbols to gain and to feel the nationalism. So the first we have is the use of the flags and the tricolor during the national movements. Flags were the symbol of the self-defiance during the marches and the protests. The first flag that was used in the Swadeshi movement was a tricolor which had red, green, and yellow as the colors. The eight lotuses representing the eight provinces of the British India, the sun and the moon representing Hindus and the Muslims living in the country. The next flag we had was the Swaraj flag, which was designed by Mahatma Gandhiji, and again a tricolor having red, green, and white color. In the middle is the charkha or the spinning wheel as the symbol of self dependence or being Atmanirbhar. The next image we have is that of Bharat Mata. So one's national identity came to be associated with a mother like figure depicting the country, which is Bharat Mata. The first image was painted by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, and this image that we see Bharat Mata as a very ascetic figure was painted by Abanindranath Tagore, showcasing Bharat Mata as a very calm, composed, divine, and spiritual mother. Then we have folklore. So Indians toured different villages to collect folk tales, and they also recorded the folk songs that were sung by the bards. These folk tales and the songs were destroyed during the colonization, and it was very important for Indians to revive their folk culture. Therefore, the revival of folk culture was led by Rabindranath Tagore, and in southern India, Natesha Shastri led the movement of the revival of folk tales. And there is one of his book which is the folklore of southern India, in which Tamil folk tales are given. Then we have the topic. reinterpretation of history. Now, history was being interpreted by the Indians. Why? Because during this colonization, Indians were blamed as being primitive, as being very backward. So it was very important for our brothers and sisters to go back to their past and evolve and evaluate their history and the developments. Therefore, they wrote about the glorious developments, including India's rich history and culture, art and architecture, science and mathematics, trade and craft. Therefore, we come to an end of this chapter, Nationalism in India. I hope I was clear to you in giving the brief introduction. Thank you for having patience.